Good evening, everybody. Leading legal minds declaring the Marxist Dim New York persecution of President Trump to be absurd, bizarre, even silly. But that hasn't slowed the Soros minded DA, Alvin Bragg, or the Marxist activist judge, Juan Merchant, in their efforts to interfere in the presidential election. What we're watching in America's corrupt legal system is terrible. The shamelessly corrupt judiciary in New York is as unprecedented as it is utterly disgusting. Not only is President Trump being persecuted through the Marxist Dems' abuse of the legal system, but President Trump is also under a gag order from Judge Merchant. Today, the Biden Justice Department's number 3 top official, Matthew Colangelo, is on temporary loan to the Manhattan DA's office and under Biden orders to do whatever it takes as a, drop in local prosecutor to get Trump and to keep him off the ballot. Colangelo's title in the DA office is senior counsel, there for one reason and one reason only: to get Trump. And today, Colangelo trying to convince an eager Judge Merchant to hold President Trump in contempt of court for violating a gag order put there by Judge Merchant. Also, he wants him fined $10,000. In other words, the Marxist Dems want President Trump silenced while they crush him under the color of law and their vicious brand of official lawfare. But President Trump gives as good as he gets. And yesterday, President Trump's legal team secured his $175 million bond in a separate case, further enraging New York Attorney General Letitia James, whose hatred for Trump drives her very being. James defeated in her claim that Trump's bonding company was inadequate. Instead, James was the one found wanting, or as Trump's legal spokeswoman, Alina Habba, put it, James tried to argue that Trump's cash, quote, isn't green enough, end quote. Here's Habba.
I just left where a judge asked us whether our cash, bond, cash, sitting in. Miss James wanted to argue and say that our cash somehow isn't green enough. We wasted time. The judge made a comment saying he thought that money market accounts could go down under the amount. He doesn't even understand basic principles of finance, but this was the man that decided that we owed money and my client committed fraud. We are going to attack every single one. 1 hour, the Attorney General and that judge realized quickly that they had no idea what they were talking about. We came to an agreement that everything would be the same, we would modify terms, and that was it. This is where your taxpaying dollars are going, America. Right here. Witch hunt after witch hunt.
President Trump's persecutors revealed their ignorance and immorality in their pursuit of the former and likely future president. And that's what this is all about, of course: stopping Trump before he retires Joe Biden and destroys the Marxist Democrat Party agenda when Trump returns to the White House. Joining us now, journalist Julie Kelly, someone who has done tremendous work in documenting the political persecution of Donald Trump and chronicling these incredible times in which we live. Julie, great to have you with us. She recently highlighted evidence of coordination between Special Counsel Jack Smith and the Biden White House in the classified documents case. No one other than Julie is doing this kind of journalism, chronicling, as I said, the corruption of the Biden regime, the crooked Merrick Garland Department of Justice, and its prosecutors. Julie, great to have you with us. And these are interesting times, if ever there were such a thing, to watch what is happening in these courts that the president is compelled to be in. He looks like he's being held hostage. In point of fact, that's the idea, isn't it? To interfere in this election, keep him off the campaign trail, and to, as best they can, diminish his popularity and accessibility.
Well, that's absolutely true. Obviously, what's happening in Judge Merchan's courtroom, completely farcical. And now we have Judge Merchan yelling at Donald Trump's lawyers today, saying that he is losing credibility, the defense team in his courtroom, as if that courtroom has any credibility, threatening to fine him, perhaps imprison him at some point for violating this bogus gag order. So, what a sideshow that Americans have to see. But of course, Donald Trump is the one who has to endure it and be in that courtroom every single day. Now, at the same time, he still has the other legal proceedings happening. As you know, Lou, what I'm covering in Southern Florida, the classified documents case. And then this Thursday at 10 o'clock, the Supreme Court will hear oral arguments related to whether a president can face criminal prosecution for his acts in office. So it never stops. I mean, he continues, he and his lawyers and his co-defendants, his family, his associates continue to take the hits from so many different directions from this reckless, dangerous lawfare being unleashed and coordinated by the Joe Biden White House and his Department of Justice.
Is there here such a expansive view to the American public of what is official, if I may use the term, lawfare? That is the corrupt use under color of law, official power to stifle the president, to stop his campaign, to absolutely charge the man with every ridiculous charge imaginable. And then the Supreme Court at the same time is going to consider the issue of immunity. It looks to me like the Marxist Dems have built a case, whether it be in the New York courtrooms, whether it be in the DC courtrooms, or whether it be Georgia, whether it be Florida. The reality is they have built a case for the Supreme Court to step in here, because this is a perfect view, it seems to me, of why it is necessary to give immunity to presidents.
Well, I think you make a really strong argument there, and that's something that the justices will debate with both sides on Thursday at 10 o'clock. So the government, Jack Smith, and then, of course, Donald Trump's legal team, as to whether a president should be entitled to prosecution from or immune from criminal prosecution. And look, Donald Trump's lawyers from the beginning at the district court level with Judge Tanya Chutkan, who is responsible for writing this groundbreaking, history-making order that denied a president immunity from criminal prosecution, saying, you know, presidents are not kings. Just because you are president doesn't insulate you from the laws of the land, et cetera, et cetera. But what Donald Trump and his lawyers have argued from the beginning is that if immunity is stripped away, or if for the first time, and this is, as you know, Lou, the first time that the Supreme Court will consider this question, if they do come back and say, yes, presidents can be subjected to criminal prosecution, this will just be a non-ending cycle then. You will have incoming presidents immediately open criminal investigations against their predecessors of, we assume, of the opposite party, use their DOJ intelligence community, all of the powers of the executive branch, as we've seen now under Joe Biden doing the same with Donald Trump in both January 6th and classified documents case. This will be a further descent into Banana Republic style territory, a place where this country never thought we would be. And that is the cycle of trying to charge, prosecute, and imprison your predecessor, which is exactly what Joe Biden and his DOJ and now others, Alvin Bragg, Fani Willis, also are attempting to do.
And of course, we have also the parallel insistence on the part of the man who chaired the January 6th committee, who's not satisfied with having gone after hundreds and hundreds of American citizens and imprisoned them. He now wants to strip President Trump of his Secret Service protection. In effect, Congressman Benny Thompson wants to kill President Trump. I don't think that's hyperbole. That's precisely what would be the possible outcome if that were to occur. Your thoughts?
Well, as I've said repeatedly, and especially watching these prosecutors and judges in Washington, D.C., in these January 6th individual cases, there is just this insatiable bloodlust. They want people punished to the harshest degree for not just for what they did on January 6th, but for supporting Donald Trump and protesting Joe Biden in the rigged election. And it's really something sick, and I called it sadistic in some ways, because you see the gratification from the pain that these prosecutors and judges can inflict on really helpless Americans. And now you have Benny Thompson, who is guilty, by the way, of destroying evidence in the January 6th investigation, destroying it and concealing it from House Republicans, including the videotaped interviews with witnesses to that committee that are gone, have been destroyed, or are somewhere that House Republicans can't find. And here he is again. What a despicable man to suggest that if an individual is convicted even on any offense or spends any time in jail, that individual should be stripped of Secret Service protection. There is no end to what these people will do. And unfortunately, they are emboldened because our Republican leadership is so weak in Washington and elsewhere. They just do not have the ability, the wherewithal, the smarts, I don't know what it is, the guts to fight back really in any way. And that's why Democrats keep getting away with what they are doing. And I don't see a way out of this unless Donald Trump wins in November.
As I watch at least parts of these hearings by the Supreme Court, I hear sometimes, perhaps I'm being too sensitive in my grading of the tones that are taken, but the court seems to have a rationality and objectivity in this past week that I find hopeful, because I think the court has to understand that it is the last refuge of the salvation of the constitutional republic. They are looking at a Marxist Dem party that has tried to intimidate them, and by the way, threaten them with their very lives. The justices, the conservative justices, they can't just disregard that, in my opinion, nor should they. This is the context of all of the actions taken by this corrupt administration, and I can take away the adjectives. I can say just this administration. It is replete with example after example of abuses of power, and from the Attorney General, from the White House to the Attorney General, to the ways in which the tentacles flowed out to these local as well as state prosecutors, whether in Georgia, whether in New York. This is just a sickening sight for anyone who cares about truth, justice, the American way, and the Constitution upon which it's all founded. And I just don't know how they could ignore the necessity for immunity. I don't know how they could ignore the need to roll back these bar associations, these judiciaries in various states that are, again, corruption is pervasive, political corruption, partisanship, and raw application of power against their political enemies. How can they ignore that, Julie?
Well, I hope that they don't. I mean, I think that the oral arguments last week related to 1512C2, the most common felony in J6 cases. This is an obstruction, post-Enron obstruction law that the DOJ has weaponized now, not just against more than 350 J6ers, but also represents half of Jack Smith's criminal indictment against Donald Trump for January 6th as well. I was encouraged by some of the debate there, especially what Chief Justice John Roberts questioned, which is always a good sign. So if they do come back and reverse how the DOJ has intentionally misinterpreted the language in that statute to now make it apply not just destroying records in a criminal investigation or shredding accounting records like we saw with Enron and Arthur Anderson, but now to criminalize political activity and political speech, and only apply it, by the way, to one set of protesters, not others, which is what the U.S. Solicitor General basically confirmed last week. I don't think that the majority of justices took too well to that. And I will tell you there was another good sign today, Lou, is that in another J6 petition for a writ of cert, a man named Russell Alford, who was convicted of 4 misdemeanors and is now trying to get the Supreme Court to hear that case. The DOJ said, well, okay, we're not going to reply to his petition unless the court demands it. And the court came back today and said, oh no, you're going to reply. We want to see your response to his claims and his brief, his petition about the abuse of these misdemeanors as well. So the Supreme Court does appear to be paying attention. So I do take that as an encouraging sign.
Yeah, and I hope that the court understands just how much the American people need a demonstration of the power of good and the application of accountability to enforce the Constitution, not simply support it, but enforce it, because enforcing that Constitution is the greatest support that I think can be given at this moment in our history. I look at what Judge Cannon is doing. Jack Smith is demanding that she not take into account anything that is pertinent to the defense of Donald Trump. I mean, effectively, that's what he did. And she has now stripped it away and shown what is there. And it makes Jack Smith look awfully bad, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And it should make Jack Smith look bad because he is a bad person and he's a bad actor, as is his team of prosecutors and investigators. They wanted to conceal from the American people the proof of collusion between the DOJ, the National Archives, the Biden White House, the intelligence community, the usual suspects, concocting and developing some sort of records investigation prosecution starting in the spring of 2021. And then immediately after Donald Trump complied or thought he fulfilled what the archives claimed that they wanted, turned over those 15 boxes in January of 2022. And then allegedly the archivist within 24 hours found all these classified papers. He's back colluding with DOJ, the Joe Biden DOJ, people like Lisa Monaco, now the Deputy Attorney General, longtime Obama loyalist who runs the DOJ now, trying to figure out how they could piece together a criminal investigation related to Donald Trump's alleged mishandling of classified papers, which of course they did. The FBI opened an investigation. They called it Plasmic Echo, which I don't know who these people are that come up with these names. In February of 2022, March of 2022, Merrick Garland authorizes proceeding with the investigation and prosecution, and then it just took off from there. So Judge Cannon, to your point, I've been in the courthouse there, I've observed her, and she is not putting up with any of this bad behavior from Jack Smith and the DOJ, and she routinely sides on the side of transparency, and that's exactly what we just got yesterday, what I was posting on Twitter, X. The difference between the motions that were redacted and the evidence exhibits that were redacted to what was filed yesterday. More transparency, more sunshine on the truth, and this is not something Jack Smith and the DOJ and Biden White House wanted to happen.
And to see the way in which President Trump has conducted himself through each of these trials in which he's had to sit now, he'll be sitting for weeks in New York, as you well know, off the campaign trail. He is suffering through a judge who is a Marxist activist whose family is in the political business of ensuring that Marxist Dems win. The reality is that he has handled himself, I think, with measure and constraint. And yes, he may or may not have violated a gag order, but it's a gag order that should never have been applied. That is an obscenity on the part of the court, among many. And I look at these prosecutors, and we'll wrap it up here, Julie, but Jack Smith, Alvin Bragg, Fannie Willis, for crying out loud. Did I mention Jack Smith? I mean, the number of prosecutors and to a person, they're wanting in terms of their ethics, their decency, and frankly, it's pretty clear that they are venal creatures who are in this for only their partisan political advantage and or financial gain. Your thoughts on these prosecutors and their shared, frankly, indecency?
I mean, I think the American people, and especially a lot of people on our side, Lou, who still somehow believe that the legal and justice system is legit, I think are getting a real eye opening experience here watching these Trump trials and also watching what's been happening with the January 6th defendants and realizing that these prosecutors, even the line prosecutors, will stop at nothing to abuse the law, to apply it unequally. A double standard exists between protesters on our side versus left wing protesters tied to the Democratic Party. And so I think that this is a very discouraging reality that Americans are waking up to, that it's not just isolated to one or two prosecutors or courtrooms, but this appears to be standard operating procedure when dealing with Donald Trump, any of his business associates, any of his voters, his family members, you name it. That this is a double system of justice while we have illegals pouring over the border, while we have cities under siege by violent crime, and a government that seems to care about none of it except making sure that Donald Trump is behind bars before the election.
Julie Kelly, as always, great to talk with you. Thanks for being with us today, and I look forward eagerly to our next conversation as as we move through this particular moment, unprecedented moment in American history. Thanks so much, Julie. Thanks for being such a faithful chronicler of our times. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Lou. Thanks for having me on.
I'd like to take just a moment here to tell you about some amazing savings that are underway from MyPillow. I'm excited to tell you about MyPillow's huge spring sale, and here are just a few examples. Buy one MyPillow 2.0, you get another absolutely free. These pillows are made with cooling technology, which means the best pillow ever is now even better. And a new price for percale bed sheets. 9 brand new colors and styles of the percale bed sheets. They're made with the finest long staple cotton, and now you can save 50% or even more. That's as low as $24.98 a set. Are you ready? For the first time this year, the My Slippers and Sandals are on sale for as low as $25 a pair. I love My Pillow slippers, believe me, and so does my wife. I mean, she loves her slippers. I love mine. And they're great. And I mean at any price. But for $25 a pair, you win, and then you win some more. So go to mypillow.com and use promo code Dobbs. That's Dobbs. I love that promo code. Or call 800-977-9152 to get the MyPillow 2.0 buy one, get one free, or the percale sheets for as low as $24.98, and My Slippers and Sandals for as low as $25 a pair. Are you kidding me? And for a limited time, when you order $75 or more, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to mypillow.com and use promo code, ready? Dobbs. Promo code Dobbs. It has a ring to it, doesn't it? And turning now to the chaos brought to you by the anti-Semitic pro-Hamas demonstrators on campuses, particularly in the Ivy League. The New York Police Department has arrested more than 100 pro-Palestinian protesters at NYU's campus, and most of them arrested shortly after nightfall. In California, anti-Israel activists, anti-Semitic activists at State Polytechnic University yesterday. And Harvard University doesn't like to be left out of this sort of thing. Harvard University suspending the Harvard Undergraduate Palestine Solidarity Committee, so-called, a student organization that protested on the college campus Friday. At last, administrators are trying to take back their universities from these anti-Semitic demonstrations. And now, a member of the so-called squad, Ilhan Omar, has come out swinging in defense of those anti-Israeli, anti-Semitic demonstrations, as her own daughter was recently arrested for her participation in the protest. Omar tweeted this, quote, "On Thursday, Columbia arrested and suspended its students who were peacefully protesting and have now ignited a nationwide Gaza solidarity movement. This is more than the students hoped for, and I am glad to see this type of solidarity. But to be clear, this is about the genocide in Gaza, and the attention has to remain on that, end quote. Well, now you wonder why she waited till the end if that was so important, why she didn't lead with it. Well, the Congresswoman's daughter claims there is uneven, heavy handed disciplinary action being taken against these demonstrators and protesters, and that we have never seen such extreme measures being taken against student protesters before. And of course, she blames Israel. And I will tell you, as a product of the 60s, these protests have seen, let's hope this is the highest level of intensity we see. And joining us now is Mike Baker. He's the host of the President's Brief podcast, a former CIA covert operations officer. He's here to talk about some of the events taking place throughout our country and around the world. And he knows whereof he speaks. And Mike, it's great to have you. And as I said earlier, it's great to see you. It's been a while. As we're looking around this world, looking at the immense failures, the Biden administration in foreign policy and other policies as well, certainly. Foreign policy is the most troubling because it could be the most lethal. The Middle East, Europe, China, Russia, South America, the Caribbean, there seems to be no safe harbor near any continent, near any hemisphere. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, you've just encapsulated the problem. We've got more crises, more global hotspots right now than we've seen in quite some time. Right? I mean, I'm old enough to remember, starting out with the agency when the Soviet Union was our primary threat. But that was almost, in a way, I don't want to make this sound wrong, but it was almost charming because you knew what the threat was, and it was in a box, and there it was. And you didn't have all these other issues going on. Now we've got multiple issues. So you go back to the Clinton era where Haiti was the big problem, or the Balkans. Mm-hmm. Now it's everywhere, as you pointed out. And the world is actually shrunk, over the years. Everything is more interconnected. By that, I mean that if you look at the Middle East, well, what's happening in the Middle East can almost all be traced back to the Iranian regime and their efforts to destabilize the region and take further control of it from their perspective. But on top of that, you've got China and you've got Russia, and they've formed this alliance with Iran. And you've got China supporting the Russian war machine. There's these things that are happening. You've got in Africa, you've got Niger and other countries looking to possibly kick out U.S. troops, right, as we lose influence around the world. So this is a very troubling time. I don't want to spook anybody, but people should be aware that what's happening overseas will impact U.S. national security. You can't close the curtains around the U.S. and say, well, we're just going to focus on our issues. That's not how the world works, unfortunately. What happens overseas can significantly, seriously damage or impact U.S. national security and economic security.
Without question, and all the more so because right now the Biden regime and its lack of wisdom and its apparent corruption has turned over 2,000 miles of our southern border to the Mexican drug cartels, across which people from Niger, throughout Africa, Asia, are coming to this country, the Middle East, and have formed, if you will, at the very best, informal fifth columns that could be threatening to the United States, and at the worst, looking at the Chinese nationals that have formed up and decamped in northern Mexico, and the tens of thousands of males, military age, that have entered this country. These are serious threats that have formed very specific fifth columns and have the same shared goal, and that is to overthrow this country and this government. By the way, they share that, it seems, with the Biden administration itself, which is taken on a Marxist-Dem ideology and is pressing it as hard and fast as they can.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the border, because that's front and center, right? When you talk about national security, you can't have national security. You can't have public security, obviously, on the streets of your cities unless you have a secure border, unless you know who's coming across the border. And, let alone and anybody, it seems like it's a wild, range, 8 to 10 million during the course of the Biden tenure of known encounters. You've got millions of known gotaways. So there's very little vetting that goes on with the people who come across the border who do encounter law enforcement. And then you've got conservatively maybe 1.8 to 2.3 or 4 million during the Biden administration's time of known gotaways, people who don't encounter law enforcement. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they are. And it would be incredibly naive, possibly just, partisan and ignorant, to imagine that we don't have issues there within that category. Because any country that's got the ability, resource, motivation, or attention will see the border for what it is. It's an opportunity, right? And so they'll use that opportunity. And whether it's for state-sponsored terrorism, whether it's for espionage, whether it's for cartel purposes, and people ask, they ask me all the time, why is the Biden administration, why have they done this with the border? Why haven't they paid attention? Why haven't they taken some relatively simple steps to secure the border? And honestly, I don't know.
My guess is, and that's all I have as a guess, because the administration is hardly forthcoming with the reasons it does anything. But certainly, it looks to me they determine it to be in their interest to fundamentally transform this country, to fundamentally transform it with the easiest possible passage of illegal aliens into this country from whatever quarter of the world they want, to distribute them around the country. And by the way, Mark Morgan, to your point about how many millions have come in little over 3 years of this administration, Mark Morgan, the former commissioner of Customs and Border Protection, puts the number in his judgment at 14 million. I'll take his number anytime over some of these think tanks and certainly this administration. We're talking about almost 5 million a year coming into this country doing what? We don't know. Where are they from? We don't know. Their health, their conditions, we don't know. Where are they working? Are they on welfare? We don't know. But we do know they're using all local services, and that's hundreds of billions of dollars right there. So it's a difficult moment, to say the least. It's going to be an even more difficult moment if God willing, and please Lord, Donald Trump is president on November 5th, at least president-elect. The work that has to be done to fix all the damage that has been done under this president is going to be enormous, almost unthinkable. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, you have the border security, obviously, issue, which is front and center. Now, I will say, I've been watching what Congress has been doing, because I spend almost all my time on operational issues, on national security matters, on homeland security, those sort of things. So in looking at how Congress has been functioning or not functioning, they did finally pass some aid bills, right? And I know that people on the right, a lot of folks on the right are very upset because they're saying, no, we shouldn't be spending any money on Ukraine because we need to do the border. Well, yes, but those things are both, they're not incompatible, right? We need to be doing the border, but we also need to be understanding that unless you're okay with Putin winning, Ukraine needs additional support. Even it's just so they can get sufficiently strong, get an upper hand in the battle currently, so that they can go to the negotiating table in a position of strength and end this thing, right? But these things, sometimes up on Capitol Hill, they seem to be acting as if, well, we can only do it this way. No, you're grown adults, right? And so I worry top line about the dysfunction of Capitol Hill sometimes and their inability to do things. The Biden administration and the way that they've treated some of these issues, I don't mean to disappear down various paths here, but I did want to mention one thing, which is the Iranian situation. The Biden administration from the very beginning took a position of appeasement towards Iran, and they staffed all the Iran-focused positions that exist at the State Department and Pentagon and White House with Iran apologists, right? And they weren't trying to hide the fact. I mean, these people, all you had to do was look at their track records and the things they've said and their performance, and you knew what they were doing. And they spent the past 3 years essentially behaving as if you just if you just removed the sanctions, if you just had a light, soft touch with Iran, that somehow the regime, the mullahs, would join the community of nations. Right. And so they released funds and they acted as if giving money, well, it's only for humanitarian purposes, as if money's not fungible. So you get what you sow, and that's what the Biden administration has done. And that allowed Iran to get to a position where they're once again this massive sponsor of terrorism. They've created this network of terrorist proxies that's encircle Israel with the stated goal, both of the proxies and the Iranian regime, of destroying Israel. We shouldn't be surprised at times, but we act as if we're surprised when things go south. Because, again, the Biden administration hasn't really, to your point about the border, they haven't been secretive about it. They're just doing it out in the open.
And the whirlwind we're reaping right now in terms of the Middle East was certainly, we have to bring in Barack Obama because he began that fundamental transformation, the attempt to legitimize Iran and to alter the balance of power throughout the Middle East, but specifically with Iran at the forefront. And this is, in these instances, when we consider these things, this does look like the third term of Barack Obama. To the other part of this conversation, we're talking about the intelligence services. Are they keeping up in your judgment? Because they've spent so much time recently wanting to have the flexibility through 702 and the FISA to spy on American citizens without warrants. To me, that is as mindless as could be for this dysfunctional Congress, as you said, to embrace. They should, at the very least, they may lose the battle, but they should be at the forefront of insisting on due process. And certainly when it comes to the activities of our intelligence services in this country. Your thoughts on that? Your knowledgeable response.
You couldn't be more correct in the sense that you have to have an intelligence service or intelligence organizations that are responsive. And to the degree, again, look, you've got to have sources and methods. There's a reason why there are some secrets. But within the intel committees, look, first and foremost, the point of protection for the American public, in theory, is supposed to be a curious, aggressive, proactive questioning, Capitol Hill, where the intel committees sit with the intel organizations and are briefed, and they are briefed. Now, sometimes there's a game in Washington, D.C. where the politicians, if things go south, act as if they've never heard of anything before. And there's a well-worn path between Langley CIA headquarters in Virginia and Capitol Hill, where the briefers go back and forth explaining to the intel committees, to those members who are privy to this top-level information, what's going on. But you need to have transparency to the degree that you can. There's no doubt about that. But at the same time, I think again, going back to this issue of two things can be true at the same time, 702 is an important tool. There is no question in my mind, anyway, from decades of experience in operations, that it is important as a tool in identifying terrorist activity. But at the same time, what can be true is that you can have very stringent protocols in place that ensure that you do not have abuse of this system. Right? It's not just one or the other. We could actually do both in a grown-up world. But again, I go back to sometimes I'm worried that the folks we send to Capitol Hill may not all be the best and brightest.
Yeah, I share your concerns about Capitol Hill, but I share greater the concerns about what is in the imperatives of the intelligence community, particularly as we watch all of the transgressions by the FBI and the CIA over the course of the past decades. It would be well worth a warrant, in my opinion, and to see the leadership of that Congress behave as dysfunctionally as the body itself is dispiriting, I'll put it that way. It is uplifting to see you, Mike Baker. We appreciate your time as always and your thoughts. Appreciate it. Mike Baker.
Great to see you.
And join us each and every day, 7 days a week on my podcast, The Great America Show, available at loudobbs.com, wherever you get your podcast. And turning now to the Marxist Dems' political persecution of President Trump. And the Marxist Dems want to keep President Trump off the campaign trail, of course. And a new poll from Siena College finds that New Yorkers aged 34 and younger are utterly uninterested in Alvin Bragg's absurd and vicious case against Trump. Trump faces unprecedented odds, but don't count him out. He is often blessed with the best kind of enemies, those who are, well, they may be ruthless, but they're never quite as smart as he is, and never, ever does he quit. Joining us now to talk about all of this is Roger Severino. Roger is the Heritage Foundation's Vice President for Domestic Policy, and he closely follows the Get Trump crusade in New York. I want to start with what is this week seems to be a demonstration of what political persecution really is, whether it be in a courtroom in New York, whether it be in Florida and Judge Cannon, or the D.C. courts, and especially the Supreme Court, looking at the issue of immunity for President Trump. And right now, it looks like the Marxist Dems are trying to win that for him, because I don't know how the Supreme Court could ignore just how important immunity is now with all of the persecution that's underway against Donald Trump. Your thoughts?
It is so hard to keep track. You need to have a spreadsheet to keep track of all the ridiculous lawsuits that have been waged against President Trump. This is lawfare. The radical Dems fear they can't win at the ballot box, so they're literally going to try to put President Trump in jail. And if not in jail, to bankrupt him. If not to bankrupt him, then to tie him up, to make him sit in a court all day, every day, for weeks on end, to prevent him from retaking the White House when he is in striking distance of doing that because of the failed policies of the radical left. And this sort of lawfare has to end. Somebody has to put a stop to it, whether it's the Supreme Court, intermediate courts, whether it's juries saying enough is enough. I'm not confident that a Manhattan jury is going to give President Trump a fair shake. But at some point, there has to be some adults saying this is not America anymore. This has to end.
You're right. I mean, this is no longer America. It's certainly not the America that any one of us remember, irrespective of age. It is also not an America that I think only very few people might want that, and most of them are Marxist, and most of them are Dems, who are right now saddled with a president who is cognitively impaired, who is corrupt, compromised by many of this country's enemies, and we're looking at more of it and not less of it, whether it be in the private sector. Lawfare is the rage against conservatives by the Marxist Democrat Party. And no one has, and I have to tell you, Roger, I thought that at some point, some leader, whether it be a business leader, a clerical leader, whoever it might be, would stand up and demand this stop. I am stunned by the fact that not a single leader in any walk of life or any part of our economy or society has stood up. Aren't you?
I am. And I thought that there would be people, even on both sides, forget the partisan issues, saying that this is not how we decide elections. We don't decide it by trying to put people in jail with fake charges. And that's what's happening in court after court after court. They're trying to do this to circumvent the will of people. And I think maybe the only way this will stop is if the other side gets a taste of its own medicine. And that's unfortunate, but this is something that, we stand for the rule of law, but we have to know what the rule is. What are the ground rules in the new environment? Because now you have Biden weaponizing the Department of Justice, going after pro-life grandmothers who protested abortion clinics, right? Sicking the FBI on traditional Catholics because of their beliefs, and parents as domestic terrorists who stand up for their kids and making sure that their daughters' locker rooms don't get invaded by boys who identify as girls. These sorts of things that have been the weaponization of the law has to end. And President Trump is standing up for the rule of law and he's speaking out against it. And now you have judges trying to impose gag orders on him as well to prevent him from even speaking up about the injustices. The evidence of what is wrong with the country is being experienced by President Trump right now. And he's being limited in being able to even talk about the corruption of justice that he's experiencing. And this is a campaign issue. We need to reform the justice system. We need to reform the FBI. We need to reform the leftist tilt of Soros prosecutors all around the country. And this is why we're seeing the fruits of this weaponization of the law. And President Trump has promised to end it, yet he's being limited in being able to even say that.
And facing the president is a venal political party, the Marxist Dems. They are Marxist. The leadership is Marxist. The agenda is Marxist. But there is in lawfare, there is in official lawfare that's conducted by the Department of Justice and the Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. His prosecutors are lying through their teeth. We're watching prosecutors in the New York courtrooms right now, lying through their teeth. The opening argument by Alvin Bragg was embarrassing for its dishonesty as well as its finality. And everywhere we turn in the court system, there is an issue of truth. And the left seems to have no tether, no grounding of any kind to fundamental American values: truth, justice, the American way. There is a loss of character in the legal profession and an explosion of Marxist ideology in the law schools and hence in the legal profession itself. Is that reversible?
At the law schools, it's tough. So I went to Harvard Law School. I was taught by Duncan Kennedy, a neo-Marxist, one of the founders of critical theory, which turned into critical race theory. And a lot of the students that went to all the Ivy League schools, they're now in a lot of positions of power. A lot of them are in the Biden administration, and they were taught that law is mutable. It's all about power. It's all about intersectionality. You have this notion that there's a hierarchy of races, and some races are permanent oppressor and permanent oppressed, which is contrary to the American ideal. And you see that this notion that it's all about power, and it's not about the rule of law, it's not about truth, then it's really about whoever is able to wield the club of law, right? And if not the club of law, then the physical club. I mean, you see the protests on these campuses where they're taking over and they're saying that they own the place and they're pushing back on police and resisting, right? This sort of level of chaos is endemic and it's coming from the left, right? Chaos is a feature, not a bug. It's part of the plan. That's what they prefer to do, and it's eroding the fabric of American society. And if you erode the institutions of the rule of law, where else do you have to turn? Where else do you have to turn? Just power. And the left demands power, it craves power, and we're seeing it manifested in the attacks against President Trump. It's all about a magic power play when under our constitutional system, the power resides in the people, and the people express their will through the vote. And through the vote, you get the elections, and that's what they're most afraid of, that President Trump will win the election and take away their power and restore it to the people.
And this week, more approximately, the Supreme Court has an opportunity to lead in the salvation of the constitutional republic. And it'll be interesting to see how they come out on the issue, particularly of immunity, because never has there been a clearer demonstration all in 1 week of how important it is. Thank you so much for being with us, Roger Severino. Thank you, and look forward to our next conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
A startling study now finds that IQ scores in the United States are dropping, and the most significant decline occurring among Americans aged 18 to 22. The number of children who cannot sign their names or read cursive is increasing, and of course, reading comprehension and penmanship are related. Writing cursive stimulates the IQ, and who knew? By the way, it's easier to write a check if you can do that too. Researchers say technology is part of the reason for the decline in cursive and also IQs. We have outsourced so much of what we do to machines, and everything from writing to our navigation is now all about digital. People who don't rely on technology so much are actually better off in terms of their IQ. A study finds that cab drivers in London have enlarged their brains because they memorize the city's labyrinth of streets without GPS. Who knew you could memorize all of that? And before we go, I want all of you to know about the amazing quality of My Pillow products, especially the items that I've enjoyed myself over the years. From dog beds to you name it, we've got a lot of great quality products, and we love the My Pillows, of course. My wife and I love the Giza sheets and our My Pillow slippers. I'm telling you, you can't beat the comfort of these slippers at any price. My Pillow products are high quality, amazing quality, and the prices, amazingly low prices as well. My Pillow has hundreds of products, and you need to know about all of them, in my opinion. And to get the word out, Mike is throwing a $25 extravaganza. And here are just a few of the deals waiting for you. 2-pack multi-use My Pillows, just $25. My Pillow sandals, $25. Their 6-pack towel sets, $25. Brand new 4-pack dish towels, just $25. And for the first time ever, premium My Pillows with all new Giza fabric, any size, any loft level, even king size, just $25. The amazing offer won't last long, so please order now. Go to mypillow.com or call 800-977-9152 and use promo code Dobbs. That's promo code Dobbs. It has a ring to it, doesn't it? And join us each and every day for my podcast, The Great America Show. We thank you for being with us this evening, and please join us here tomorrow as well. 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central. The Lindell Report coming up next. Here is Mike Lindell. Thanks for being with us. God bless you, and good night.
Three years ago, FrankSpeech.com was launched during the height of mass media censorship to give voices back to those who had their voices silenced. This April, Lindell TV celebrates 3 years of uncensored truth about America's stolen elections, the voting machines, and the fight to return to paper ballots. Today, we stand at the precipice of a new era, covering the most important